November 1944. The air war over Europe is at its peak. A formation of American B-17 flying fortresses returning from a brutal daylight raid deep into Germany is cruising at 25,000 feet. Suddenly, pilots and gunners spot something impossible. Glowing orbs of light, shimmering with an unearthly energy, are pacing their aircraft. They are not flak bursts. They are not enemy fighters. They move with an impossible agility, accelerating and turning in ways that defy known physics. At first, the crews assume it's a secret German weapon, a final, desperate wonder weapon from a dying regime. But the objects make no hostile moves. They simply observe. This is the first documented, large-scale encounter with what Allied pilots would soon dub the Foo Fighters. For the men in these bombers, the war had just introduced a new, incomprehensible, and deeply terrifying variable. The term Foo Fighter was coined by the crew of the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, a specialized U.S. Army Air Force unit flying radar-equipped Beaufighters and later Black Widows. While on a night mission over the Rhine Valley, pilot Donald Myers and his radar operator spotted a cluster of fiery red balls approaching at incredible speed. They maneuvered violently, but the objects mirrored their every move with an eerie, silent precision. In the debriefing, the crew struggled to describe what they had seen. Radar operator Edward Schluter, drawing on the then popular Smokey Stover comic strip, which featured the catchphrase, "Where there's Foo, there's fire," referred to the objects as Foo Fighters. The name stuck. It was a piece of American pop culture slapped onto a phenomenon that was anything but humorous. It was a name born from bewilderment, a casual label for a profound mystery. What makes the Foo Fighter phenomenon so compelling is that it was not one-sided. German pilots were seeing the exact same things. Luftwaffe veterans reported glowing spheres, often described as Kugelblitz ball, lightning, or Feuerbell, fireballs that would stalk their Me-262 jet fighters and other aircraft. German intelligence, just like their Allied counterparts, initially suspected a secret enemy weapon. They theorized the Allies had developed small, remote-controlled craft designed to disrupt their advanced jet engines. Both sides, locked in a technological death struggle, looked at these objects and saw the hand of their enemy. This mutual confusion is perhaps the most significant piece of evidence that the Foo Fighters were neither an Allied nor an Axis weapon. They were a true unknown, a third party in the skies of World War II. As reports flooded in from experienced, battle-hardened pilots, military intelligence could no longer dismiss them as battle fatigue or hallucinations. The Allies created a secret classification, the Foo Fighter phenomenon. Scientists and military analysts were tasked with finding an explanation. Was it electrostatic discharge? Ball lightning? A new form of German propaganda designed to demoralize bomber crews? The Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the forerunner to the CIA, even investigated the possibility that they were Japanese fire balloons, but the flight characteristics and global nature of the sightings ruled this out. The investigations were thorough, but every conventional explanation fell short. The official reports, many of which remain classified to this day, concluded with a frustrating admission. The phenomenon was real, but its origin and nature were unexplained. The mystery was not confined to Europe. U.S. Navy pilots in the Pacific encountered their own versions of the phenomenon. They reported glowing objects they called green fireballs or balls of fire that would follow the aircraft off the coast of Japan and over the vast empty stretches of the ocean. B-29 crews on firebombing raids over Tokyo reported seeing fast-moving lights that would dart between their formations at impossible speeds. The consistency of the descriptions across two completely separate theaters of war, from pilots who had no communication with each other, added a new layer of depth to the mystery. It proved that whatever the Foo Fighters were, they were a global presence, observing the entire worldwide conflict from the air. For the pilots, the Foo Fighters were more than a curiosity. They were a source of deep psychological stress. These men were trained to face known threats, enemy fighters, flak, and mechanical failure. They understood the rules of that deadly game. The Foo Fighters broke all the rules. They couldn't be outrun, outmaneuvered, or shot down. They induced a feeling of helplessness. Commanders, worried about morale, often instructed their men not to discuss the sightings publicly, fearing they would be labeled as crackpots or suffering from combat fatigue. This policy of quiet suppression, while understandable, left many pilots feeling isolated and doubting their own sanity. They were fighting two wars, one against a human enemy and another against a silent, untouchable, and inexplicable observer. In the decades since the war, scientists have proposed various theories to explain the Foo Fighters. The most prominent is ball lightning, a poorly understood atmospheric plasma phenomenon. However, the consistent descriptions of Foo Fighters performing intelligent, controlled maneuvers, such as pacing aircraft and flying in formation, go far beyond the random, fleeting behavior typically associated with ball lightning. Other theories include St. Elmo's fire, a luminous plasma discharge, or severe physiological and perceptual effects caused by oxygen deprivation or vertigo at high altitudes. Yet again, these explanations fail to account for the radar confirmations and the multiple independent visual sightings from different crew members on the same aircraft. The scientific consensus, or lack thereof, only deepens the historical mystery. The end of World War II did not mean the end of the sightings. In fact, it marked the beginning of the modern UFO era. Many of the first major UFO reports of the late 1940s, including the famous 1947 sighting by pilot Kenneth Arnold that coined the term flying saucer, came from military aviators who had served in the war. They were the same men, or colleagues of the men, who had seen Foo Fighters. The investigative framework and the initial suspicion also carried over. When the U.S. Air Force launched its official UFO investigation, Project Sign, in 1947, many of its analysts were convinced they were dealing with a technological unknown first encountered during the war. The Foo Fighters are the direct historical precursor to the UFO phenomenon, a prologue written in the fire-filled skies of the Second World War. The mystery that began with the Foo Fighters has come full circle. Today, the U.S. government uses the term unidentified aerial phenomena UAP. In recent years, the Navy has declassified videos and officially acknowledged encounters between its top fighter pilots and objects exhibiting performance characteristics that mirror those described in 1944: instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities, and transmedium travel. The conversation has moved from the fringe to the halls of Congress. The parallels are undeniable. Just as the pilots of the 415th Night Fighter Squadron were bewildered by their Foo, modern pilots are baffled by the tic-tacs and gimbals they encounter. The technology has changed, but the core mystery and its implications remains terrifyingly and thrillingly the same. 80 years later, the question remains, what were the Foo Fighters? A secret Nazi weapon? There is no evidence in any captured German archive to support this. An allied psychological operation? The mutual confusion on both sides definitively rules this out. A natural phenomenon? The descriptions of controlled, intelligent flight challenge our entire understanding of physics and atmospheric science. The most compelling evidence is the testimony of the pilots themselves. Experienced, credible observers who risked their lives to report something they could not explain. The Foo Fighters represent one of the most well-documented and enduring mysteries of the 20th century. They were silent witnesses to humanity's greatest conflict, a puzzle without a solution, a ghost in the machine of war that continues to haunt us to this day.